Good morning and welcome to Tshedimosetso House, GCIS, for the post-cabinet briefing that will be led by the Minister in the Presidency. My name is William Baloy. We are going to be joined by Thabo and Nobuhle on sign language. Minister, we invite you to take us through the post-cabinet briefing statement. Thank you.
Good morning. This is the statement of the cabinet meeting that took place on Wednesday, the 1st of July, 2026. On issues in the environment, the comprehensive approach to managing migration in South Africa, Cabinet extended its appreciation to South Africans who participated in peaceful protests against unregulated migration and commended the National Joint Operations and Intelligence Structures, commonly known as NOID joints, for enforcing peaceful protests on the 30th of June 2026. The NOID joints have briefed on the details of incidences, and therefore Cabinet will not repeat those details. Cabinet also commended the work of the Interministerial Task Team under the chairship of Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, Ms. Mamoloko Kubai, for the sterling work in the implementation of the comprehensive approach to managing migration as announced by the President on the 7th of June 2026. Cabinet received an update on the implementation of the 5 pillars of the comprehensive approach, which progress include under the law enforcement pillar, increased labor inspections at companies suspected of employing undocumented foreign national under the guidance of the Deputy Ministers of Employment and Labor, Mr. Jomo Sibia, Deputy Minister of Home Affairs, Mr. Njabulo Nzuza, and Deputy Minister of Police, Dr. Poli Bushielo. Ensuring orderly and lawful deportations with the re-establishment of Immigration Specialized Court in Durban that worked to process deportations that were being facilitated at Sherwood in Durban, the Immigration Court at the OR Tambo International Airport, sorry for the abbreviation, ORTI, that's what we call it, and the reactivation of the court at the Lindela Repatriation Center in Krugersdorp. Also, the progress includes the swift response to support repatriation initiatives, and we must note, it's repatriation initiatives of home countries to ensure coordinated and dignified repatriations. This has resulted in the IMC swiftly setting up a temporary repatriation center in Musina for the efficient facilitation under conditions that are dignified and humane. In this regard, Cabinet extended its appreciations to non-profit organizations who are continuing to support the work of government in providing food and other supplies. Both they did that in Durban and also now they are with us in Musina. Also, Cabinet appreciated that the Border Management Authority continues to intercept irregular immigrants attempting to enter the country lawfully, and those comprised undocumented immigrants and also undesirable persons. And there are other people who have been refused to enter the country due to non-compliant travel documentation, and the work of the BMA continues. As of okay, no, these are the details provided by NED Joints. NED Joints has provided in his briefing details around the cases that have been opened that are related to criminal activities since the protests or against unregular immigration, including the arrests that have been made and the cases that are before the courts. And we are confident that NEJOINS will speedily resolve the cases that are outstanding and make sure that all people who are responsible for criminal acts are brought to book. On Thursday, the 2nd of July 2026, some of the members of the IMC conducted an inspection in Loko on the Limpopo-Zimbabwe border to appreciate the scope of work for the IMC workstream on border infrastructure improvements. So as we now continue with the law enforcement operations for labor inspections and other related matters, we are now also hyping up the work of the second stream, which is the border infrastructure improvement, and where's the other streams of policy and legislative gaps and alignments are being addressed as well. Bafana stellar performance at the 2026 FIFA World Cup. Cabinet joined the nation in congratulating Bafana on their stellar performance at the 2026 FIFA World Cup, which saw the team progressing to the round of 32 for the first time since South Africa's 1998 World Cup debut. Bafana also displayed impressive football against Canada in the round of 32, where they had breakingly lost to a stoppage time goal. Our nation is extremely proud of our boys who showed that they could go toe-to-toe with the best on the global stage. And you should know that now majority of our Bafana stars are now transferring to teams in Europe, showing that we are the best amongst the best. And we thank you, South Africans, for your hearty welcome to our boys. No DNA, just RSA. On the economy, South Africa records significant improvement in global competitiveness ranking. Cabinet welcomes South Africa's significant improvement in global competitiveness as reflected in the 2026 World Cup Competitiveness Yearbook, which ranks us 54th compared to 64th in 2025. The report was released in June 2026 by the Institute for Management Development, IMD, in partnership with the Productivity SA, and saw South Africa improving by 10 places from its previous ranking. The improved ranking is boosted by progress in government efficiency, growing business confidence, and enhanced infrastructure management, underscoring the impact of ongoing reforms to strengthen economic performance and governance. South Africa Infrastructure Summit reinforces the country's public investment drive. Cabinet commended the successful hosting of the South Africa Infrastructure Summit and Expo from the 9th to the 11th of June 2026 at the Gallagher Convention Center in Johannesburg, which provided an important platform to advance partnerships, mobilize investment, and accelerate the implementation of strategic infrastructure projects. Discussions focused on expanding public-private partnerships, improving logistics networks, and strengthening strengthening transport, water, and digital infrastructure to support economic growth and development. These infrastructure initiatives give effect to the commitments announced by President Ramaphosa in the 2026 State of the Nation Address, which outlined an ambitious program of infrastructure-led growth with more than 1 trillion in public infrastructure over the medium term. On international relations, the SACU Summit under the reimagined SACU deepening regional integration. Cabinet commended the success of the 9th Southern African Customs Union Summit. We must indicate SACU is one of the longest existing customs union in the world, over 100 years. The summit for head of states or government on the 26th of June 2026. A major outcome of the summit, and in line with the reimagined SACU approach, member states reaffirmed their commitment to SACU as an engine to drive regional economic integration, industrial and economic diversification, expanded intra-regional trade and investment, policy harmonization, and sustainable economic development. Industrialization remains at the center of SACCO's developmental agenda. Maintaining strategic relations with China, Deputy President Paul Mashatile concluded a successful working visit to China from the 20th to the 26th of June 2026, aimed at further strengthening economic relations and expanding opportunities for investment and industrial cooperation. During the visit, he also held bilateral meetings with His Excellency Mr. Hang Zheng, the Vice President of the People's Republic of China, to discuss matters of mutual interest and further strengthen bilateral economic ties. During the visit, Deputy President Mashatile participated in the 4th China International Supply Chain Expo, where he reinforced South Africa's position as a gateway to sub-Saharan Africa for trade, investment, and industrial cooperation. The strengthened partnership is expected to attract increased investment, expanded opportunities for local businesses, and support inclusive economic growth that create jobs. Cabinet decisions. The draft strategic petroleum stocks policy. Cabinet approved the publication of the draft strategic petroleum stocks policy for public comment. The policy aims to strengthen South Africa's energy security and minimize the economic impact of supply stocks. It follows a comprehensive study commissioned by the government in 2024 on the country's strategic petroleum stocks, which identified areas requiring attention, including the need to strengthen stockholding arrangements and increase domestic refining capacity. The policy proposes a mixed stockholding model under which the South African National Petroleum Company will maintain strategic reserves equivalent to 60 days of net imports for both crude oil and refined petroleum products, with a phased increase to 90 days over the long term. The policy will contribute to safeguarding national energy security, improving resilience against global supply shocks, and supporting sustainable economic growth. Integrated Social Facilitation Framework. Cabinet approved the Integrated Social Facilitation Framework as a binding national policy instrument to standardize and institutionalize community engagement in infrastructure delivery across all spheres of government, state-owned entities, and infrastructure development stakeholders. The framework is intended to address community protest, project disruptions, vandalism, delays, and security risks by promoting structured community participation throughout the infrastructure project lifecycle, thereby strengthening public trust, social cohesion, and protection of infrastructure investments. The Integrated Social Facilitation Framework introduces a professionalized and coordinated approach to social facilitation, including accreditation of social facilitators, clearer governance arrangements, stronger monitoring and evaluation, and a risk-based approach to managing community-related risks. Ministerial Working Group on Science, Technology, Innovation Funding Report. Cabinet approved the release of the Science, Technology, and Innovation Funding Report for public comments. The report emphasizes the need for South Africa to avoid over-reliance on foreign funding and to build local funding capacity to mitigate threats posed to the country's research programs in order to safeguard South Africa's scientific sovereignty. Ratification of the Southern Africa Development Community Protocol on Industry. Cabinet approved the submission of the SADC Protocol on Industry to Parliament for ratification. The protocol is a legally binding regional agreement aimed at developing a diversified, innovating, and globally competitive industrial base across Southern Africa. Its objective is to promote sustainable and inclusive economic growth. South Africa's ratification of the protocol will contribute to bringing it to force and effect as we continue to focus on regional economic and industrial development and promote a transition from the export of raw materials to the export of high-valued manufactured products. Ratification of the agreement on the conservation and sustainable use of marine biological diversity of areas beyond national jurisdiction. Cabinet approved the submission of the agreement on the conservation and sustainable use of marine biodiversity of areas beyond national jurisdiction agreement to Parliament for ratification, also known as the High Seas Treaty. The agreement is a legally binding United Nations instrument designed to promote the conservation and sustainable use of marine biodiversity in international waters. South Africa played an active role in negotiating the agreement under the United Nations Conventions on the Law of the Sea. The agreement is expected to strengthen global ocean governance by enhancing international cooperation in the protection and sustainable management of marine resources in international laws. The bills. The first bill is the National Environmental Management Laws Amendment Bill 2026. Cabinet approved the publication of the National Environmental Management Laws Amendment Bill 2026 for public comments. The bill seeks to amend the National Environmental Management Act of 1998, Act number 107, to strengthen environmental compliance and enforcement by empowering environmental inspectors to issue compliance notices and enable municipalities to issue directives for environmental violations. The bill also introduces an administrative penalty system into South Africa's national environmental legislation. This will complement existing criminal sanctions by providing an alternative to criminal prosecution for less serious environmental contraventions, enabling more efficient enforcement while avoiding the delays and reputational risks associated with criminal proceedings. Electronic Deeds Registration and Recordal Systems Amendment Bill. Cabinet approved the submission of the Electronic Deeds Registration and Recordal Systems Amendment Bill to Parliament. The bill seeks to amend the Electronic Deeds Registration Act number 19 of 2019, the Deeds Registration Act number 47 of 1937, and the Sectional Titles Act number 95 of 1986 to modernize the legislative framework governing deeds registration and recordal systems. The bill advances the objectives of an inclusive economy and enhanced security of land tenure. The proposed amendments are largely technical in nature and are intended to strengthen the security of title and improve the administration of land and property rights for the benefit of landowners and rights holders. Updates to Cabinet. The 2026-2027 National Intelligence Estimate, National Intelligence Priorities, and National Intelligence Estimates Implementation Plan. Cabinet was briefed about the National Security Council approved 2026-27 National Intelligence Estimates, National Intelligence Priorities, and it considered the National Intelligence Estimates Implementation Plan. Cabinet noted that the national intelligence structures are continuing to make inroads in the implementation of national intelligence estimates. On priorities which are beyond the mandates of the national intelligence structures, the NIE implementation plan continues to be strengthened, and in those regard, part of the implementation plans that are outside the mandate of the national intelligence structures, which the NIE emphasizes, is strengthened labor inspection to ensure compliance with South Africa's labor law. 2, strict regulations of local economies to ensure participation and ownership in favor of citizens in line with Section 22 of the Constitution, with emphasis on the regulations of the spaza shop, other small and informal businesses to ensure meaningful ownership and participation by citizens. 3, the energy self-sufficiency for energy and food security in light of South Africa's resource endowments. And 4 is the focus on climate change and the large El Nino that is due to affect us and the mitigation plans that are required there too. In due course, and on the advice of the national intelligence structures, the Minister in the Presidency will release the 2020-2021 National Intelligence Estimates and Priorities. You will recall we always release, we do a delayed release of the National Intelligence Estimates and Priorities. So we do not release the current ones, we release the previous period. On the Public Service Commission advisory note on the participation of public servants in political party study groups and other related engagement, Cabinet has noted that the Public Service Commission has formulated the advisory note without soliciting views from other parties that use the study group mechanism to prepare for portfolio committees, and urge the Public Service Commission to consult more widely. The South African dispensation is based on proportional representation system of political parties. As such, Parliament is organized through party caucuses. Party caucuses then organize themselves in a manner for its efficient functioning, and other parties are organized through study groups, others through working groups, and others through individual consultation. The assumption of the advisory note is that senior officials participate in study groups through the instruction of their ministers or deputy ministers, and it disregards the invitations to study groups, to working groups, and other engagements by members of various political parties in order to empower members of parliament to exercise efficient oversight. Cabinet has agreed to take the work through the participation in study groups, working groups, and other related mechanisms to the clearinghouse mechanism to work on guidelines for the participation of senior officials in study groups and related mechanisms of political parties represented in parliament. And the senior officials are invited, in terms of cabinet, who are invited should participate in study groups to provide technical information, to empower MPs, to improve oversight and accountability, and to hold the executive to account. And this is not limited to parties that are in the GNU. This support must also be extended to parties that are in parliament, because officials hold the technical capability and they can explain the technical terms to government, to MPs, excuse me. State-owned enterprises reforms. Cabinet received a progress report on the implementation of reforms aimed at strengthening state-owned enterprises to ensure that they are fit for purpose. Ongoing progress in driving implementation of the SOE reform program includes key initiatives that focus on strengthening governance, enhancing sustainability, and increasing accountability across SOCs. A key initiative of the National State Enterprise Bill, which provides for the establishment of a centralized entity to coordinate SOC reforms, standardize governance practices, and remuneration guidelines, and support improved performance across the SOC portfolio. Through the SOC performance monitoring framework, performance of 72 Schedule 2, Schedule 3A, and Schedule 3B entities were assessed during the 2026 financial year. The assessment identified several governance challenges requiring targeted interventions. The framework remains a critical instrument for strengthening oversight, improving governance, and enhancing organizational performance across state-owned enterprises through the assessment of planning, reporting, and performance management processes. Complementing these reforms is the process of rationalization and repositioning of the SOCs, building on the work of the Presidential State-Owned Enterprises Council, which submitted its recommendation to the President in April 2024. Project on access to education support and service to children and young people with disabilities in South Africa. Cabinet noted 2 reports developed by the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities, which assess the gap between South Africa's inclusive education policies and the lived realities of children and young people with disabilities. Conducted between October 2022 and March 2024, the project comprised evaluating existing education support services and identified practical interventions to improve learning and teaching outcomes. Cabinet reaffirmed South Africa's commitment to building a single inclusive education system that caters for the needs of children and young people with disabilities. Key recommendations include reforming education legislation or promulgating regulations in accordance with South Africa Schools Act to enforce the right to equal, equitable, and quality education for children and young people with disability. The reports also recommend that higher education institutions introduce compulsory, inclusive, and special needs education courses for students training to become teachers. The 2 reports are available at the website of the Department of Women, Youth and People with Disability, dwypd.gov.za. Truth and Reconciliation Commission recommendations. Cabinet received and considered Parliament's approved annual update on the implementation of the TRC recommendations in June 2003. Parliament approved the granting of reparations to TRC identified victims. These include final ones of reparation a payment of 30,000, medical benefits and other forms of social assistance, symbols and monuments, and community rehabilitation as part of the healing the wounds of the past. Cabinet noted progress in the implementation of these measures, including the promulgation of the regulations by the President governing once-off individual reparations, exhumation, reburial, and symbolic burial of victims, basic education assistance, higher education and training assistance, and housing assistance. The outstanding draft regulations relating to the health and community rehabilitation are at various stages of finalization. In addition, 17,455 of the 21,676 TRC identified victims who applied for once-off individual repatriations received their 30,000 grant. The total amount paid for the once-off individual reparation is nearly 500 million. To ensure that all eligible beneficiaries receive the support due to them, on June 2026, a general notice was published in the Government Gazette calling for the TRC identified victims or their next set of kin who have not yet applied for reparations to come forward and claim their once-off reparations of 30,000 rands. On the progress with the implementation of the action plan on the President's response to the State Capture Commission, Cabinet welcomed the continued progress in implementing the President's response to the State Capture Commission recommendations, with 62% of the 60 actions, which means 37 actions, are completed or substantially completed, with 18% on track and 20% delayed but progressing. Notable achievements in the implementing the implementation plan on the state of capture recommendation includes the recovery of approximately 17.1 billion in assets linked to the state of capture, the finalization of 6 criminal matters resulting in guilty verdicts, the enactment of key legislative reforms, and ongoing measures to strengthen anti-corruption, procurement governance, and accountability systems. While significant progress has been made in advancing reforms relating to the public sector professionalization, whistleblower protection, state-owned entity governance, procurement oversight, and institutional integrity, several complex structural reforms remain under development and required sustained attention, and which Cabinet continues to give to ensure the full implementation of the Commission's recommendations. On appointments, all appointments are subject to verification of qualifications and related security clearances. The first appointment is the appointment of the concurrence to the appointment of Dr. Tsepo Mukoka as the Group Chief Executive Officer of the Central Energy Fund, Ms. Lindokuhle Nzoyi as the Chief Executive Officer of Amatole Water, Dr. Michael Masiapato as Commissioner of the Border Management Authority, which is the extension of term of office, Dr. Musa Furumele as the South African Chief Representative to the Lesotho Highlands Water Commission, and Ms. Nelly Dineondumo as an alternative representative thereof. Appointment of the chairperson and a member of the board of the National Lotteries Commission, with the appointment of Mr. Tembinko Sibonakele as the chairperson and Ms. Mpho Sonia Mausing as a member. Appointment of the board members of the Mine Health and Safety Council, which include Mr. David Msiza as the chairperson, Mr. Xolile Mbonambi, deputy, who's the representative of the Department of Mineral and Petroleum Resources, Dr. Dipalisa Mokoboto from the DMPR as well, Mr. Mtokozisi A. Zondi, DMPR, Mr. Ndibuzanyi Mahwasane, DMPR, Ms. Naledi Tsipane from the National Union of Mine Workers, Ms. Melanie Roy from the National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa, Mr. Nico van Rooyen from UASA, Mr. John Ditoet Poning from Solidariteit, Mr. Johannes Tabang Sitlake from AMCU, Mr. Dushendra Naidu, Minerals Council of South Africa, Dr. Mumudau, Vandat Resources, Mr. T.W. Sepetla from Harmony Gold, Mr. Ronald Mafuko Overlooked Group, and Ms. Letitia van der Berg, ESAPAS, Ms. Constance Kekana, alternate member, Mr. Thabo Ngwenya, alternate member, Mr. Masibulele Naki, alternate member of NUM, Mr. Enoch Manyoni, alternate member of NUMSA, Mr. Johnny White, alternate member of UASA, Mr. Jacobus Johannes de Wet-Blow, alternate member of Solidarity, Mr. D. Gabriel Nkosi, alternate member of AMCU, Dr. Tutula Balfour, alternate member of Mineral Council of South Africa, Mr. Modise Ronald Mutlamme, alternate member of Harmony Gold, and Dr. Kelvin Naidu, alternate member of Valetra Platinum. Upcoming events, the Mandela Month. South Africa will, in this month of July, commemorate Mandela Month under the theme, "It's still in our hands to combat poverty and inequity." Cabinet calls on all South Africans to dedicate their time and efforts during Mandela Month and on Nelson Mandela International Day on the 18th of July, 2026, to help build a South Africa that works for South Africans. National Science Month. July marks National Science Month, which will be launched on 4 July 2026 at the Vaal University of Technology, Southern Gauteng Science and Technology Park in Sebokeng, under the theme, "Science, Technology and Innovation are for Everyone." The month-long science celebration aims to build a science-literate society that can form independent opinions on science, technology, and innovation. It seeks to promote a community with confidence in science, scientists, and scientific institutions. On condolences, Cabinet expressed condolences to the friends and families of the South African jazz icon Abdullah Ibrahim, who was one of the most influential figures in global jazz, who had a remarkable career spanning more than 7 decades. He will be remembered as one of the most celebrated musicians and cultural ambassadors, but he was a freedom fighter, and his contribution to the freedom of this country remains remarkable. He is popularly known for his song, "Manning Back," and others. We also wish to extend our condolences to the 3 victims from 2 Mozambique nationals and 1 Malawi national who were victims of the attacks on foreign nationals towards the build-up of the 30 June protest. And we have committed no joints to make sure that no stone is left unturned until those who are responsible for their murders are arrested and the justice is served. There is no one who has a right to murder and kill anyone in South Africa, whether they are South African or not South African, whether they are documented or not documented. The right to life is a universal right and is guaranteed. Congratulations. Cabinet extended its congratulations and well wishes to the Minister of Employment and Labor, Nomakosazana Meth, for her election as the Vice Chairperson of the Workers and Employers Groups of the International Labour Organization, ILO. Mr. Kagiso Rabada, for an outstanding season during the India Premier League 2026, which saw him emerge as the top bowler and win the coveted purple cap. No DNA? The room is very cold. How? No DNA? Just RSA. South African cricketer and captain Themba Bavuma, who was named amongst the 100-time most influential sports people of 2026, a prestigious honor awarded by global publication Time magazine. Captain, my captain, congratulations, Captain Themba Bavuma. Vayanda Walaza for winning the men's 100 meters at the Austria Golden Spike in Czechia, crossing the finish line in a remarkable 9.9 seconds. What should we say? No DNA? Just RSA. You cannot wish South Africa away in the sprint field. Whether the other ones are maturing, the younger ones are coming, and we continue to ban the sprint field. And the champion of world sprint, Akani Simbine, on winning the men's 100 race at the FBK Games in the Netherlands with a time of 10.08 seconds. I don't know what to say. Prudence Sikhodiso on becoming the first South African woman to win a gold medal at the World Athletics Indoor Championships following her historic victory in Nanjing, China. No DNA, just RSA. The Proteas women for flying the South African flag high and qualifying for the semi-finals of the T20 Women's World Cup. Cabinet calls on all South Africans to rally behind the Proteas women as they face England yesterday. And what's the outcome? What's the outcome? They competed amongst the best, and they still we are rooting for them to take over the championship, though England came out tops this time around. I was checking if we're only following football or we're also watching the, the cricket on the side. The junior Springboks for defeating Uruguay 104-7 in their opening match of the Rugby World Cup, Rugby Junior World Championship in Georgia. Another sprinter, Bradley Nkwana, for joining a very exclusive club by becoming the 12th South African to break the 10-second barrier over 100 meters. I told you, we are only we are sub 10 in South Africa. George Kush and Haidastale for winning the 2026 men's and women's Comrades Marathon respectively. Kush completed the up run in a historic record-breaking time of 5 hours, 15 minutes and 56 seconds, while Steyn secured a fifth title with an up run record of 5 hours, 44 minutes and 53 seconds, showing that the difference between men and women in sport has become very negligible, and therefore the compensation must be equal across all sports. And we want to continue to commend our national teams, our sportsmen and women, for continuing to build and bring this nation together, making sure they remind us what we are. We are South Africans, first and foremost, black and white. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister, for the statement. We will then move into question times. We'll start first in the media center, and later on we'll go for questions that have been sent online. The drill is the same. You'll press the red knob when it's red there, and then you would introduce yourself, and then we'll take the questions. I see 2 hands thus far, so I'll start with the one on the left and then the second one. Oh, maybe let's try this one. Yeah, that one, yes.
First question, Minister. We saw former President Jacob Zuma in India with fugitives who ran away from this country, in particular Mr. A.J. Gupta. And we saw one of the employees of the Department of International Relations and Cooperation, alongside the former president, meeting a fugitive of the country. What is the government's response of this heinous act by this DERCO official who went to meet with a fugitive who's ran away and stolen billions from this country, siphoned illegally, with former President Jacob Zuma and Mr. Mzwanele mine? What is the government's view in this response? What response have you received from the Department of International Relations and Cooperation, Mr. Ronald Ramula and Mr. Zingamo, the DG, on this particular act? Will there be any action taken against this particular DERCO employee who's went and seen the fugitive of the country with former President Zuma? Then when it comes to the travel of these former heads of state, does the government not track where they are going and who they are meeting? Particularly noting that former President Zuma, as a former head of state, was at the helm when these particular brothers siphoned millions, if not billions, from the state, whom today he says are his friends, and are going to come back and run this country through their blessings. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mangoba from ENC. I think somebody has captured a question that I wanted to ask. I just wanted to, also find out if there will be any consequences or any sanctions against the South African Commissioner to India regarding this visit. And, also the messaging that this sends to South Africans, are you concerned about the messaging that this is sending to South Africa, given that the Guptas are fugitives of the law?
Thank you very much. I don't see any other question in the House or any indication. Minister, those were the two questions that we had.
Thank you for those questions. You recall that South Africa has applied for mutual assistance to bring the fugitive Gupta brothers back into the country. Therefore, it's a level of disgrace that our own employee, the representative of the government of South Africa, hobnobs with the criminals instead of doing his work to ensure that the fugitives are brought back into South Africa so that they can face their criminal act. It is for that reason that the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Minister Lamola, has not only requested for a report from the official, but has indicated that drastic steps will be taken to make sure that nobody undermines the laws of this country whilst representing this country. In terms of whether we track, you are aware that there are privileges extended to former state presidents, but government is entitled to review such privileges if they are abused to undermine the laws of this republic. This is not the first instance in relation to this particular state president that he undermines not only the foreign policy of the country, but also the laws of the country when he's supported by the country. But we do not have the itineraries of the former state presidents when they travel. Currently, the privileges gives us a request to fund their traveling and whatever, and that we are reviewing those issues. We also are very clear that the messaging is very wrong, both from Ambassador Shukla on his conduct, because he's directly undermining the criminal justice system of this country, and and showing a middle finger to South Africans who paying his salary instead of him performing his tasks as required by the laws of this country. So we'll await the report from the Minister of DECO and to make sure that necessary steps are taken against Ambassador Shukla. And similarly, it's also very disturbing that a former state president can openly and unapologetically show the middle finger to South Africans. We have lost a lot of money through the Gupta brothers' shenanigans in our country, and continues to show a middle finger and claims that he wants to run this country again. It shows the type of person he is, and it's for South Africans to judge. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister. May I then request that we get the online questions. Vanessa?
Sohiso Mali, a politics reporter from News 24. The minister mentions that the cabinet has identified some gaps in the immigration policy, and now it seeks to plug them. What are those gaps? Why were they not plugged before the crisis? How do you respond to criticism that the government has contributed significantly to this crisis through failure to implement its own laws? How many foreign nationals have been deported? Arthur from Hot FM in Cape Town. Can you please confirm the deployment of soldiers to assist in managing anti-illegal foreigner protests? Could you please elaborate on the role of the SANDF in this deployment, including its mandate, responsibilities, and the expected duration of the operation? Does government have a timeline to conclude the repatriation of all migrants who are being processed in Musina? That's all we have for now.
Thank you very much. I'm not sure, Vanessa, if you can check the question also from Bronin Roberts of AFP.
Bronwyn, AFP. Will the government reimburse foreign nationals for their losses and property left behind because they had to leave South Africa so quickly, as has been demanded by Nigeria?
Thank you very much, Minister. I think these were the only questions that we have online. Then Minister then can also take us to the conclusion of the briefing.
May I have the repeat of the very first question?
The first question was from Soyiso Malidi, a politics reporter from News 24. The minister mentions that the cabinet has identified some gaps in the immigration policy. What are those gaps? Why were they not plugged before the crisis? How do you respond to criticism that the government has contributed significantly to this crisis through failure to implement its own laws?
Thank
How
you.
many foreign nationals have been reported?
Thank you. It's very interesting that a politics reporter does not know what's happening in politics. South Africa amended the white paper on immigration, refugee protection, and asylum seekers in 2023. And then we undertook the revision of the very white paper. That is the policy document. And that revision was completed in March 20, was the final revised white paper on immigration, refugee protection. It's a very long name. Was approved in March 2026. So we have we identified the policy gaps and we have done the amendments. From the white paper, which is the policy document, we then, Department of Home Affairs is finalizing the draft bill so that we can then amend the laws. And the part of the things that we are amending is the first country of safety principle. This first country of safety principle says, if you are in a country that there's conflict, there's wars, there's famine, you are entitled to move and be granted refugee status in the first next country where you are safe. You will recall when we were announcing the approval of that white paper, I indicated that there is no wars or famine in the Southern African countries that where the first country of safety principle will apply. I said there is no war in Namibia, there is no war in Botswana, there is no war in Zimbabwe, there is no war in Mozambique, and there's no war in Lesotho, where the first country of principle will apply for South Africa. Even if you go further, there's no war in Malawi, there's no war in Zambia. That's what we announced at that point, and that's why we are instituting the first country of principle, which will then put in the immigration law. But also in that law, in the white paper, we've also proposed that we then change the how people access South Africa's papers on naturalization. That the naturalization by marriage has been abused, and there are people who have been married just for South African papers. And it's part of those things that we are correcting. In line with that, we also announced the issue of the green ID book that is highly, what do you call it? Highly, where it can be highly forged, and that we are moving to the smart IDs and the rollout of the smart IDs in the banks. We started, by the way, in 2018, starting to roll them out in banks, and we progress now to having more banks that are rolling them out. And you'll recall in the same principle, we indicated there were other names that were not able to be captured in the smart ID card, including some of the Q and the Kwe and the Nama names, and that and Home Affairs then made the necessary changes to allow the ability of those names to be written in the to be written through the smart card, because you know the use of exclamation marks and figures in IT, they had limitations. We had to work around those. So we have had those interventions. So I will not understand why a political reporter will not know those things, because we have been reporting on them. It's simply. I think I want to make a plea to our journalists. Can we go and do research? We have a responsibility to inform and to educate South Africans. We need to be fact-based, because majority of our problems in South Africa is that we've got sensational reporting which is not based on facts. And we then tread very closely on misinformation and disinformation because of our reporting. We are pleading that let's invest in the work that we do, because we've got a higher responsibility to keep South Africans informed, to make sure that the information is accurate and the South Africans are educated. It's the ability, it's the responsibility we have, and your Hippocratic oath as journalists requires you to do that as a minimum. The government of South Africa has been implementing its laws, and we have been taken to court a number of times to be challenged. You'll recall that even when we were dealing with the processing of refugee applications, we had to go up to the ConCourt, which finally made a ruling, I think last month, that says if you are declined an application for a refugee status, you cannot continue to apply, you must leave, and because people were clogging that system by remaining in there. And so we have been taken to court on a number of measures that we have sought to do. And it's important that's why some of the amendments we're doing to make sure we correct what the courts have found as weaknesses. Then there was a question around the deployment of soldiers. Again, colleagues, the president announced the deployment of soldiers in the provinces of Gauteng, Northwest, KZN, Eastern Cape, under Project Prosper, to fight organized crime and to support the police in the fight against organized crime. So the soldiers are already deployed. So why should we be explaining? That's why even on Tuesday at the march, you saw the soldier deploying in the evening to support the police. During the day, the police had to do their work, and the soldiers deployed in the evening, because they are already deployed in terms of Operation Prosper. There's nothing that we need to explain there. Please go back and read on the deployment on Operation Prosper. Do we have a timeline to conclude the reparation of immigrants who are being processed in Musina? Maybe let me give the context. The South African government did not initiate the reparation of anyone. It is the home countries of Nigeria, of Ghana, of Malawi, who said they are going to repatriate their citizens. Because in terms of mandate, we have no obligation and responsibility to repatriate anyone. Our responsibility in terms of our immigration laws is to deport those who are in the countries illegally. And also the government of Mozambique then repatriated. And we must indicate the government of Mozambique, when they started to initiate repatriations, they coordinated with ourselves to make sure that they got support. And we must also acknowledge their intervention that has helped us to guide how do we support the other repatriations. The government of Mozambique, when they started to repatriate, they said because their buses are too many, they are requesting that they be escorted. and we started to escort the buses. It was the first export of repatriation of Mozambique was the buses traveling from Mossel Bay, if you recall the Mossel Bay incident. And we repatriated the people of the government of Mozambique repatriated its citizens with our support. What we have been clear about is that there's nobody who's going to be repatriated without being processed in the country, because there are no fugitive against the law who are going to leave the Republic of South Africa. They have to be prosecuted. You can't leave with children who are South African children. You can't leave with children who are not accounted for in terms of their parents. And you'll recall we released a statement through the Border Management Authority in terms of the number of children who were refused to exit because they were not traveling with their parents and there was no proper authorization by their parents to leave the country, because we have a responsibility to protect children. There were South Africans who were taking chances saying they want to visit Mozambique, if you recall, and they are going to visit their friends. We denied them to leave the Republic. The things got to head when the Malawian government were, after making a call for reparations, they did not have enough resources. And that call was made not even by the government of Malawi, it was made by the High Commission of Malawi. Then they pleaded for donations, contributions to repatriate people. And then the numbers became unbearable at Sherwood. And it was going to start to be a humanitarian crisis. The government then intervened and said, how do we assist? But the honors of repatriating Malawians still lies with the government of Malawi. We are only intervening to make sure we avoid a humanitarian crisis. With the other countries who are repatriating, people gather in their embassies or high commissions or consulate offices across the country. But Malawians did not go to their high commission or to their consulate. They went to Home Affairs offices. Even as we speak, yesterday we were at the Musina Repatriation Center. The officials of the Malawi High Commission, they decided they are going to sleep, whereas the officials of Home Affairs, BMA, and all parties in South Africa work 24 hours non-sleep to process the Malawian nationals. We do not know what is the number that is coming through. When we think we had progressed, a large number, more numbers are coming through. And that's why we sent DECO to interact with the Malawi High Commission to make sure that their officials are available 24/7. Because the challenge with Malawi is that Malawians don't even have papers. They are being issued what is called collective passport so that they can leave. So without the Malawian High Commission being available 24/7 to help us to process, there won't be papers for them to exit the country. So do we know when are we going to finish processing? We're processing at the pace of processing and the rate of processing on the South African side is much quicker than the rate we're processing at Sherwood in terms of the reparations. But we are hamstrung by the unavailability of the Malawian High Commission and Mission in South Africa at a 24-hour basis to make sure that their citizens are treated with dignity and they can be repatriated as quickly as possible. We've even come up as government where the Malawian government has said they do not have resources, whereas the High Commission is the one who created this problem. And we must be clear, it's the High Commission who created this problem. We have now tried to go into our resources in an unfunded mandate to make sure that we find buses to transport the Malawi nationals to go home so that they don't stay longer at the repatriation center. So we need to give that context, because there's a tendency of wanting to say it's the South African government that is repatriating. We are only responding to a crisis not of our own making, but initiated by the Malawian government. We want to take this opportunity to call on South Africans. You have no law enforcement responsibility. You cannot continue to go door to door asking for proof of identifications of foreign nationals in the country. You cannot continue to go workplace to workplace asking for how many foreign nationals are employed. We have indicated in this cabinet statement that there is a dedicated team that is doing inspections coordinated by the deputy ministers. We spoke about 3 deputy ministers. In the last decision of the IMC, we have increased the number of deputy ministers to do inspections at the workplaces, and they are going to target workplaces where we know majority of employees, they are undocumented. And we have continued to call on employers, to stop employing undocumented nationals. That's why we have had incidences which NetJoins reported on the arrest of employers who continue to undermine the labor laws of this country and employ undocumented foreign nationals. We have called on our municipalities to enforce bylaws in terms of the people who stay in places of operations, but also in areas where there's overcrowding, and to make sure that everybody stays in right conditions. And we have called on the immigration officials and the police to do their work, to make sure that we continue to find those who are not in the country legally to be deported as in terms of the laws of the country. It's all our work, and it's all depends to all of us. South Africans cannot take the law into their own hands. The government is firmly in charge of the process of making sure that we deal effectively with undocumented foreign nationals, irregular migration in the country. That's why we also undertook a part of the work stream is the work stream on dealing with border infrastructure. Not just the port of entry, but the borderline itself in its totality. We'll use a combination of infrastructure upgrade and technology, so that those who think they will leave our country and come back illegally again will not have the opportunity to do so. But we plead with the media to get our facts right and to read our laws, to read our policies, so that we can communicate and inform the nation and educate the nation. It's our responsibility that there be social cohesion in our country. Thank you very much. We are facing a winter, and we want you to go and rest in this weekend. It has been, a majority of people have been anxious with all sorts of threats about 30 June, when we assured you as government that there will not be a shutdown of this country, there will be law and order in this country. You chose not to believe us. I do not know how many times we have to prove ourselves that we have the capacity as the state to protect South Africa, South Africans, and all who live in it. And we request that next time there are threats and we say we've got a handle of it, trust us and continue to operate in your normal process. We don't want you to have heart palpitations, high blood pressure, elevated sugar levels, elevated diabetes level, because you think your government is not there. Your government has always been there. Your government has got your back. We are working to make sure that this country is not only peaceful, but is prosperous and the economy can grow. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. This brings us to the end of this presser. The presser is adjourned. And thank you very much, and have a nice weekend.